Welcome to the WangHiro podcast, where we answer Malaysians' burning questions about personal finance with fact-based answers.
Why do we need to care about food security, and what opportunities can employees, entrepreneurs, and investors capture during these shifts in food supply that are happening here in Malaysia and internationally? Welcome back to the WangHiro podcast. Today, we're starting a new series called Trends, where we uncover employment, business, and investment opportunities Malaysians can profit from. In today's episode, we are looking at the most basic human need, food security. So, John, why do you think Malaysians should care about food security?
Malaysia's richest person, even though he doesn't reside in Malaysia, is Robert Kuok. Now, if I think you've read the memoirs before, I think some Malaysians have, but most have not. What was the industry that actually propelled his first big break? Was actually sugar. He's known as the Malaysian sugar king.
Yep.
Okay, and his argument or his hypothesis back then when he got into the sugar trade, actually his family started out as rice traders in Johor.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, but why did he concentrate on sugar? Because he said sugar is the cheapest form of human satisfaction. Because he said you give sugar, it helps, it sweetens the food, sweetens your drink. And then if you give sugar to kids, I mean, back in the days, 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, right? For you to have like a lot 10 gummy bar, there was not so advanced manufacturing to create all this variety of sweets, but just the most basic processing to create a snack was actually based out of sugar. And why do I anchor the episode today around something like Robert Kuok did? Because he understood the basic needs of human. He understood that it was a universal need that everybody needs. If you conquer or command the logistics, the supply chain, the whole value chain of this kind of commodity, I think that's where he became very, very powerful. If you've read the memoirs, I'm trying not to spoil the book, but I'm trying to use this as to encourage most people to read the book, is that one of the companies which we'll discuss later, who he controls, he was actually trading with them. Yeah, it's actually a French company. The hint I'll give you is a French company, and he was trading with them. And why the Chinese government actually is so appreciative of Robert Kuok was that he actually bartered a trade to help secure Chinese sugar supply when they were in need. And he didn't create a panic. He did it so covertly that no one knew about it actually.
Wow, I think it's also like something that people overlook, right?
Correct.
Opportunities in food, because it's just there, right?
Yes.
What money can we make from there? But look at Robert Kuok.
Correct. Even in the US, there's someone even more dominant. It's called the Fanhu family. They are so influential, Louis. They can even influence change of presidents.
Oh,
because of the size of their sugar trade. There's actually documentaries. Not many. It's not very predominant, but there are actually documentaries detailing about this because what they're doing has somehow had an effect on the Florida ecosystem actually. So I'm not going to go into detail. That warrants another episode altogether. But what I'm saying is that the guys who control food, the food value chain, are actually very, very powerful. It's just that they are so they're not like the tech moguls that get all the media time. Mark Zuckerberg, Jensen Huang of Nvidia, all these guys. I mean, Robert Kuok only because people cover him on Forbes, but people don't actually cover his businesses. I mean, like. Another one, the Salim Group of Indonesia. Most of us, if you're not in the business or investing space, you've not even heard of the Salim Group, right? But we definitely have consumed the product. It's called Indomie.
Oh, that's true.
you see what I mean? So basic food also. You see, basic food, and I think in an era where tech, all this kind of news grabbing headlines is taking all this media time and everything. We take for granted, like there's a joke on one of the documentaries I've watched while researching about food security about 1-2 years ago, was actually they said that kids today think that food comes from the fridge.
It's true, and And I also showed you this I think last week before our pod, right? That so many people now are consuming processed food without realizing there's an alternative.
Precisely.
That's the problem. And I think when we think about the business, if you I mean everyone's trying to add some kind of like modifiers to the food to make money.
Correct.
Yeah.
To
So
value add, so-called
value
add.
flash freezing whatsoever, put it into fancy packaging, but in fact it's just food.
Yeah.
And I think, do you think I have this question around why we are talking about food today is, do you think the opportunities around food security have accelerated because of the pandemic?
Yes, absolutely. And actually that was what prompted me to start. So it was a combination of a few things. So it's a great question. As an engineer, I've always focused my investing, and even now for my clients, I always focus on verticals that are in a way advantageous to me. So engineering and all that kind of thing. But more and more when I was researching on this thing called IIoT. IoT stands for Internet of Things, but IIoT stands for Industrial Internet of Things. The ones that have the industry that has the slowest but also the most opportunity for IIoT to grow is actually agriculture.
Interesting. And why?
Because you think about how farms are actually managed and all that, they're not industrialized in a way. It's always small scale, very fragmented and all that kind of thing. In the US, yes, but in Asia, no. It's still very small scale and all this. So when I got into that and I chanced upon, I remember back Robert Kuok and all that, that's where I started researching more and more, because the message that I saw for me, the trigger was this, Louis. People pouring out tons and tons of milk because during the pandemic, so you think about packaging. Okay, maybe I'm starting to go towards the second segment, which is globalisation and localisation. You think about milk. Okay, milk is usually produced in a four temperament country. Either the Australias of this world, New Zealand, or even Holland, Europe, right? Now, most of the packaging we see in the food store is mainly for consumers, 1 liter by Tetra Pak, right? But for the HoReCa industry, HoReCa stands for hotels, restaurants, and all the other food and beverage. Their packaging doesn't come in the 1 liter one. It's inefficient because it's money, right?
Yeah.
A lot of this packaging comes in the 5 liter, 10 liter kind of bottle to supply to the food industry, the HoReCa industry. Now, you and I know HoReCa industry during COVID just went down the road.
Correct.
But because the value chain or the supply chain was built in a way with that kind of packaging, all that kind of thing, and they couldn't meet the cold chain supply time and all that kind of thing, they just literally opened the taps on these huge tanks of milk, and then they just let it flow into the drain, Louis.
Wow.
So that image was very vivid to me. I'm like, oh my God, I don't know. For me, as an investor, I don't even understand this value chain, and is there opportunities to be made because of ignorance? That's what led me to start digging, start understanding all these kind of things. And then second big wake up call was this, Louis. Palm oil CPO prices hit $8,000 last year.
Yeah, correct.
Right. And then Malaysia is the second largest palm oil producer in the world, and yet we don't. How much do we know about the supply chain? Then the Russia-Ukraine war hit, and then potash, the fertilizer cost actually increased double and all that kind of thing. So for me, it's like, wow, this is an industry that people take for granted.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, and I think to add to that, for me personally, I didn't see that. What a waste of milk, right? Imagine during the COVID pandemic time, I saw a lot of mothers struggling to feed their kids.
Yes.
And yet we're seeing all this wastage because of the value supply chain, capitalism and all that. So what I saw during that time was the chicken shortage in Singapore. I was like, wow, interesting. I did not know that Singapore depended so much on Malaysian chicken at that point. I was like, At that moment, I did think about, wow, what an opportunity for Singaporeans to grow their own chicken, and which is something that they're doing right now.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think all of these changes, right? And you mentioned about the Russian-Ukraine war. Potato is the big one. I think during that time, when I tried ordering French fries from McDonald's or KFC. I couldn't get any.
Yeah.
And then I think there was like I saw in KFC they put up a notice saying there's a lack of potatoes due to the war.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's interesting that they would just like put it there. So I also thought, okay, why are we not growing enough potatoes for ourselves? You know, why do we have to depend on them for all these potatoes?
Correct. And you hit the nail on the coffin about self-sufficiency, which is something we're going to talk about, the globalisation versus localization, and what I'm seeing and what a lot of experts are actually seeing in the trend. Louis, maybe just a question for you, because you're mainly based out of Miri. Do you see concepts like farm to plate very common there, or is it more also very, very much commercialized? You understand the farm to plate concept, right? That means shorten the distance or the logistics from where the food is being produced to where it gets to the consumer. Is that something you see in Miri because of the abundant land or not?
I think I definitely see more here than in KL and I think in Singapore. So one thing that's poignant in my memory is like when I went on a vacation with my Singapore friend once, and then she commented something very interesting. She said, "Oh, that's a real chicken." I froze, you know. I wondered if she was joking. I was like, "What do you mean? It is a real, what do you mean a real chicken?" And she's like, "I have never seen a real chicken." She was like 30 at that time. I was like, "Wow, you have never seen a real chicken?" And she's like, "Yeah, this is literally the first time I've seen a chicken alive, walking before being killed, you know." Yeah, slaughtered, right? And put on the plate. I'm like, then what kind of like chicken do you eat? Do you know where your chicken is from? Yeah, I don't know. Kampong, eh? This is literally not enough kampongs in Singapore to supply the chicken, you know. I'm like, very interesting. So that really stuck to me that, oh, actually I've been living in a kind of different world to these Singaporeans.
Yeah.
She's not alone in that. I think her friends are all the same.
Yeah.
So to your question, we do see that a lot in Sarawak, I think.
Yeah.
It's quite common for restaurants to use locally grown vegetables and even homegrown vegetables. So what I know is that my sister's father-in-law used to grow these like vegetables in his backyard, and then these restaurants would come and buy from him. Like they would buy from homeowners around Miri, so that I think they find that fresher, nicer lah. So that's one, and then like a chicken as well. A lot of like mushrooms. A lot of those like are homegrown. At least if it's not grown in Miri, it's grown somewhere around Sarawak, like Cebu. I think that quite a lot. Like this if you go to grocery store in Miri, probably you'll see about 30% will be grown in Sarawak.
Nice.
Vegetables.
Yeah,
mostly vegetables. I think fruits you still need to import those. Like lemons are sometimes local, but most fruits like apples, like all those like avocados are from Sabah.
Nice! I didn't know. Yeah, usually there's a series on Netflix about food security. Very interesting series. I stopped watching because it was like too addictive. They were talking about cartels, like drug cartels that used to control drug supply. They will actually hire private military groups to control the supply chain of avocado in Mexico because it's big business.
Wow,
it is seriously big business in certain parts of the world. No, virtually, yeah.
Americans like to eat avocado in many different formats, right?
Precisely. That's why they have to control the supply chain in Mexico, because it's a water. It was actually a very interesting docu-series because it talked about the avocado growers in California versus that of Mexico, and the contrasting between the struggle for water supply, the struggle for labor, the struggle for supply chain pricing, all these kind of things.
I mean, kudos to them though for identifying that opportunity.
Yes.
I mean, like if it must have taken one very smart person in the cartel to think, hey, you know, actually this food supply chain is making more than drugs.
Correct. Yes, exactly. So yeah.
How about in KL? Do you see this? I mean, what?
There are restaurants that
how
say
local?
this, but again, I've not done I've not done enough digging to verify whether it's really farm to plate kind of thing, because, like, my son, thank God.
It's a USP, right, for them.
Yeah, it is a it's a great USP for them to sell. But again,
For Sarawakians, not really lah. Not really. Nobody like, if you put that out in Sarawak, I don't think nobody will bat an eye. Like you said,
Yeah.
from homegrown in Sarawak. No.
no one, even like, for example, Midin,
Mm.
Midin, or whatever, either
yeah.
B or the M in front, right? Do you know that I've just recently heard, and I was quite surprised, because I was always told that Midin cannot grow artificially. It has to be like freshly grown, natural habitat or so. What I've heard most recently is they can actually grow Midin horticulturally already.
Oh,
Yeah, because the
that's
demand, the supply and demand, the demand is just too high, but the supply is not coming. So someone actually figure out a way, because I had my father's university professor while he was doing his master's from Penang. He loved Midin so much. Okay. And every time my father tried to ship the thing to him in a box, put in newspaper, and then pack it nicely and all that kind of thing, and try to ship it over to Penang. By the time it reaches Penang, it's like yeah.
It's like one of the most, like, what do you say, fragile vegetables as well. It's
Correct.
very hard. Even if you leave it like out for a few days, it's already rotten. Even if you put it in the fridge, it's very hard to keep fresh. Even in Sarawak, right? Imagine shipping it all over. I don't think.
Correct.
You have some kind of way, like how exporters do it, lah. But if you do it like in a retail
Vacuum
way,
pack law, because you can't freeze. I don't think you can. Maybe I'm not an expert in food science.
Vegetables, I don't think you can flash freeze it.
Yeah. So the only way is probably vacuum packing. That means you remove all the moisture out of it, but then I don't know whether the vegetable will taste nice after that.
It will be different, definitely.
Yeah.
You probably have to add artificial flavors into it. But I mean, yes, that's also an opportunity, right? I mean, Midin is a quite crunchy, nice, different texture. So those who can see this as an opportunity will invest into that. That's really good. Yeah.
For those listening in on a show, whether if you're listening in from outside of Malaysia or even West Malaysians, if you've never visited Sarawak, I doubt you've tasted this vegetable before. It's my favorite. Every time I land, either in Miri or Kuching or whatever, as long as I can find Midin, I'll have Midin for as a vegetable. Yeah. In Sabah, it's even more unique. The sweet potato vegetable, but not the leaf, the stalk. You know, the sweet potato, the cangkok manis, but they won't eat the leaf. In Sarawak and in West Malaysia, people will eat the leaf in pan min, but in Sabah they eat the stalk.
Yeah. I ate that when I was in Sabah, quite a bit just before the pandemic.
Yeah.
It's quite different. You think like Chinese food is the same everywhere, but it's not really.
Nope, it's not.
My Sabah business associate brought me there last time. I was like, hey, what is this? And she's like, oh, it's the best, very crunchy, and it captures the flavor very well, and they're right.
Yeah.
So I think there's like opportunities like this everywhere. Maybe we think about like, okay, you talk about the globalization to localization a bit just now. So I think globalization, when I was in secondary school, my teacher at that time, he was a New Zealander, computer science teacher. He was a New Zealander, and he said, do you know what's globalization? I was 15 years old at that time. I said, I don't know. And he's like, globalization is what makes this whatever. I forgot what he was saying. I think a pen drive or something. What makes this very cheap, So it's like, oh, he said, Louis, if you want to make money in this world, you have to understand what's globalization and how to profit from it. Yeah. So then I was like, okay. Then at that age, at that time, I actually went to look at it and was like, oh, globalization is this way to make like the process more efficient, cost effective. Go where the labor is cheap, land is cheap, etc. But increasingly, we're seeing that this method strategy may not always work out. You mentioned, if there's a war, we may see supply shortages of certain vegetables, right?
All right.
Let's say, if we depend on some country and they straight up refuse to supply it to us, then what happens? You see, there's a food shortage. So is it necessarily that we need to have one over the other, or how can they coexist?
I think it's a fantastic question rather than winner takes all in one. I think it really boils down to the dietary advice that most people or get used to, or not just dietary, the dietary requirements that most people are used to. So, like for example, in any Asian country, our staple is rice. You can't run away from it. It's like even if you don't use it as a meal, part of the meal, it is very used in kueh. Okay, I don't understand what will be what I don't know what's the right translated word for kueh in English. Is there a word? Have you thought about it? I've not thought
No
about
way, I've never thought of it.
Yeah.
I think I've seen people try to translate it as, but it depends on the kueh, you know, like starchy treats.
Yeah, starchy treats. I think that's a very good way to describe it. Starchy treats. The base material is actually rice, and it's so predominant in our culture that you can't get away. I mean, you go to Thailand, you have mango sticky rice. You come to Malaysia, you've got dodol or whatever, right? Either coconut base or all these kind of things, right? So even then, because of government policies, because of business incentives, even Malaysia, do you know that we are not self-sufficient in rice? That means we have to import our rice. We only self-sufficient up to, we're not even self-sufficient, we only supply about 60 to 70% of internal demand for rice.
That's scary.
The rest is actually, so let me see if we can get this chart out. Malaysia SSI chart, self-sufficiency index, food chart. Okay, so I remember when I was doing research for this, the DOSM actually produces once or twice a year the chart, and you'll be surprised, right? There are certain things that are okay. I'll give you another example. Talk about beef. Do you think Malaysia is self-sufficient in terms of chart? Beef. Let's take a while again.
I guess not.
Yeah.
In this question.
yeah. We were so insufficiently producing a lot of this. That's why milk, even though milk is not a staple, beef, we import a lot of our beef, even from India. That's why there was a scandal. I don't know if you remember, there was a scandal that says instead of beef, we were actually getting buffalo meat.
Oh, I know.
That's why for me, you see, the beauty about investing or looking at business opportunities is like you pick up bits and pieces here and there, and then unless you do reflection, you think like, how is this? Is it just passing news, or is it an opportunity for you to understand and dig deeper? I think that's the anchor that we're trying to do on the show. So a lot of things, even certain fruits, obviously we can't grow apples here, or that kind of thing. But back to your question about should one trump the other, it actually boils down to habits. Like avocado, why would Americans eat so much when it's not naturally grown in the US? I mean, it's not a
native, right?
Native to the US state, right?
Marketing. Like salmon is the same.
Correct. Why should Malaysians eat salmon when we have abundant on kembung, a lot of other fish, like arawana, like the betutu fish in Miri is like 1 kilogram. How many people from Hong Kong fly all the way to eat betutu fish? I don't know if you heard of this before. It's crazy. It's crazy because they say, oh, this is the best fish in the world, or that kind of thing. So it's again marketing, incentive structures, and to be self-sufficient. I think one is it comes as a package. How economics incentives are aligned so that support local, eat local is good for you, for health.
I think to this point that makes sense because I mean I grew up in a household where my mom always told me to eat as close to the farm as possible.
Yes.
I think that also comes from her upbringing where she did eat off her own farm.
Yep.
So that always stuck with me. She's like, oh, this came from which country? Don't eat it. It's too far.
Yep.
So that always ingrained in me. Even if it doesn't like fit the marketing bill, I still eat it. If it's local, if it
Right.
tastes good, it's not from a polluted source. That's
Yes.
how I grade my food normally.
Yeah.
The more packaged it is, the less I want to eat it, even if the packaging says it's full of nutrients.
Yeah.
Did you see that scandal around salmon from Norwegia?
Oh yeah. The coloring and all that kind of thing. I was like,
No, just not the coloring, it's the farms. The polluted
oh
farms. Have you seen that?
no, I've not seen that
So
one.
right before I saw that, I bought into the marketing where we have to eat all this salmon, and then it turns out that
Vitamin D, all that kind of thing, right?
a lot of like omega oils. So apparently they farm the salmon so badly that they actually farm in like pesticide polluted waters. So all these salmon,
yes. Now I remember. And then they had the salmon heads that were infected, the fish head that were infected, like mutants. It looks like mutants.
Alright, so every time I see we like to think imported food is good. So whenever I see like people, like put Norwegian salmon, I immediately turn off because of that document. I'm very sure that not all Norwegian salmon is that bad. Like, it's just that experience. It's just marketing, you see. So in the end, you see, a lot of people buy into the marketing that salmon is good for your health, but in fact, there are different grades of salmon.
Correct.
The one that you see, the very peachy one, it's full of fat. It's actually very bad for your health. Not as good as it's being like. Sold,
Yeah. So I managed to find it. It's 2021. As you can see, let me.
Oh, quite. Wow, this is interesting.
Yeah, it's a chart produced by DOSM quite often. And as you can see this, right? Sugarcane, if it's like 149, that means we produce 1.5 times or 1.49 times actually more than what is required. Fresh milk, we only produce like 56. That means we can only produce half lah. So if you look at rice, we only produce 65% of what we need. It means the remaining 35% is actually imported. Sardines, sweet potato. What surprised me was things like cuttlefish, because it's not really a staple diet here. Okay. And it's not, maybe it's the fishing, the seas around Malaysia don't actually. Pork, 93%. I don't even know this. Topito Scout. This is maybe kembong. It looks like kembong to me though. Okay. So sea bass, 97%, tuna, tilapia, rambutans, even rambutans we're not even self-sufficient based on the consumption. Threadfin, mayao, okay. Chicken meat, 99.9. So not fully sufficient. That's why during the COVID crisis, I think that's where the Malaysian government took the set ban. And that's why Singapore, as you mentioned earlier in the conversation, what's the joke going around at that point of time, Louis? They were actually using rice to actually form the shape of a drumstick. And put it on.
Oh, I think I did see that. Yeah.
Yeah. It was so funny for me. It's like
very funny. Yeah.
I said it to my Singaporean friends. It's like, yeah, good meme. So I don't think globalization and localization winner takes all. It's more about marketing. The diet that we choose is actually your choice. So in a way, a lot of people say that, hey, food inflation is going to hit everyone. Not necessarily if you make smart choices.
Interesting. What kind of smart choices are we talking about?
So rather than like what you just said, do you need to have Norwegian salmon as a diet? Do you need to have beef? Yeah.
Little choices on
correct. Individual little choices. Obviously, further down the rung, even the most basic protein. That's why chicken. Okay, I was studying this because I was studying certain poultry players around the world, and also the poultry premix. There was a poultry premix company that is recently listed 2019 during COVID time, right? And what I've understood from the research was very, very interesting. You want to guess how many kilograms of chicken Malaysians eat per year on average?
Per person, is it?
per person on average? Just take a wild guess. No right or wrong answer.
100 kg.
Okay, that's on the high end. Malaysia eats about 54 kilograms. Okay, so that means one person per year you eat half 50 kilograms. It's quite a lot already. It's a bag of cement, of chicken.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's a lot. It's a
literally a bag of cement. Okay, over 1 year lah. Okay, then if you look at our neighboring countries like Indonesia, where the per capita income is slightly lower, okay, you want to guess what was the kilogram per consumption of chicken?
20.
Yes. Oh, spot on. 20. It's about 20.
Wow, okay. Wow,
Yeah. So what am I trying to say with regards to globalization and localization and the choices of food? Chicken is one of the cheapest protein sources besides eggs. So in order for you to look at the pricing power, personal consumption, and choices of food people can make, chicken is the cheapest way to provide protein. And yet, we as a nation where we still have a sizable B40, M40, right? We are only, Indonesia is consuming half of what we have. You see the point I'm trying to make? The point I'm trying to make is that even choices is only available to those who have a little bit more. But at the slightly bottom rung, right, there's actually not much choices that these guys can have, So, but because if you have choices, you do have an option to control your food inflation already. Don't eat imported stuff. Have a lot of, and that's why that self-sufficiency ratio SSR that I showed you is how you can look at making smarter choices on your food. Because the more it's produced locally, okay, the likelihood, I'm not saying all, the likelihood of it being cheaper on the pocket will be there.
Yeah, I think for me personally, I look at the health benefits more than anything. I know that it's a lot cheaper, and I feel like, okay, anything that has to come from like from the other side of the world to me, right, on my plate, is gonna go through a lot of different kinds of processing. Even if it looks the same, but it will be different on a micro level. I feel like.
Yes.
Like the taste different. I think in Sarawak for a period of time, and I think it's still the case now, we are having a shortage on pork. So what happened is that when we went to buy the pork, these vendors were telling us, these are from Germany, I think.
Yeah.
Germany. So German pork. It was actually cheaper. So I thought maybe they were like frozen pork all the way. And what happened, like when my mom tried to cook it, and she's like, it's tasteless. Same price.
Frozen already, ma.
Yeah, it looks like when you take it out, it looks like the same thing, but when you cook it, right, it is tasteless. It's like doesn't have any taste, because it's like, okay, think about it all the way here.
Yeah.
And I don't think the vendors actually add anything to it. There are some unscrupulous ones that would add some flavoring to it, right? But then these didn't do it. So when you cook it, it's just like I would say like if it's like almost like not eating it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah. So that really like impacted the way I think about all of these, even meat,
Yeah.
Even meat. Because we used to have a lot of pork in Sarawak.
Yes.
I never had that problem, but recently, because of all those diseases, so
there's a swine fever going around. That's why.
Yeah, the swine fever, so shortage of pork. Then I thought, wow, this is quite bad, So for me, I also make like very conscious choices not to eat certain meats, even fish. Fish actually depends on where you live.
Yeah.
If it's very near those like factories.
Yes.
So does it mean that if people say, eating fish is good for you, then you eat a lot of fish? Not really.
Not really.
A lot of fish have a lot of mercury.
Yeah.
If you see, if you look at like if an old person or a younger person starts to have like brain deterioration very quickly, you have to look into those mercury levels as well.
Yeah.
Things that people don't think about.
Yeah. So I think the key takeaway for this subtopic about globalization and localization, actionable insights to those listening is you can make smarter choices that will actually help in your food inflation rise. by actually getting more local stuff. Secondly, is that as an entrepreneur, there are certain advantages that Malaysia has as a country because of our climate, because of still a lot of arable land that may be able to help you, find a way to commercialize it. And I think the struggle for most people is that they only look for the in-trend, the sexy stuff, and they've forgotten that Malaysia used to be a very, and still is, a very agriculture-driven economy, but we have not changed with the times. We've not modernized, and that's why the inefficiencies it's actually what is gnawing at the growth prospects of this industry. I hope I'm making sense to you, Louis.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I was just looking at that chart, right? The SSR chart, and I was like, okay, actually, in fact, a lot of entrepreneurs can just look at this chart and see like what business to go into, right?
Precisely.
Right? Because like I in Miri, I know that there are people who have coconut farms now because of the increase in coconut demand. So I was like, okay, how much money can we actually make from having a coconut farm? I never understood where to check, but I think this is one good gauge, right?
Yes.
To see like if I supply, if I only supply domestically, would I have enough money to survive?
Yeah. Actually, I can't name names and I can't name companies, but we had a very interesting discussion around the dinner table about coconut. Because coconut is very much like palm oil. So palm oil is a very efficient. Okay, when we say efficient, what do we mean? There's nothing goes to waste. So the coconut, once you press, you go to a mill, you press so that the oil comes out, you extract the oil, and the palm kernel, you can extract everything, right? If you are a good operator, the husk that you, after all the waste, the husk, right, is actually burned as a fuel source for biomass. So you actually self-generate your own self-generating electricity. So nothing goes to waste. Everything on the plantation is like that one. Coconut is the same thing, You think about it. The dried up, the pulp of the coconut, right? It can be used for everything. Everything. The water can be used for something. The pulp can be used for something, and it's a very efficient plant as well. And the economics of it is much better. Even this director of this company, right? He shared with me something very different, very very unique. So I was talking about pineapple because Sarawak is very famous for pineapple.
Yep.
You want to guess how often a pineapple actually bears fruit in a year, or produces one fruit a year?
Once.
So as a plant, as a cash crop, right? It's not very efficient,
Yeah, lor.
You see, so all these kind of things, right? It led me to think, wow, the more I know, the more I don't know. The more I think I know, the more I don't know. And starting from the chart, then you go and understand the economics of it. That's where the opportunity may arise for you, lah. Even now, jackfruit, they use it as a protein replacement.
Oh, jackfruit.
Yeah, because in terms of density of protein, I was listening to a startup pitch, and they actually use it as a protein.
Fresh jackfruit or
process?
Process.
Yeah,
because
process.
fresh jackfruit feels like a lot more carb than protein.
Yeah. They use it as now, once you process it, they use it almost like a protein replacement. So it's quite interesting. Yeah.
I think there are also like some limits of producing things locally, right?
Correct, definitely. Weather, fertilizer, and then time to market, the cold chain processing. There's a lot. I mean, we're just giving a very 50,000 feet overview and probably 40,000 feet overview on the industry that does not get enough airtime, I would say.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah. So I think even with us saying that, right, Louis, there is also certain limits on localization. Like, for example, with increasing wages, minimum wages, I don't know if you heard the news this morning. They are trying to get, and I support this fully. They're trying to get the minimum wage for TVET qualified workers to be 2,000 instead of 1,500. So that means if you attended a skill school, a vocational school, or polytech, your starting pay shouldn't be 1,500. It should be 2,000. which
Agree.
why is that related to agriculture is because a lot of agriculture is backbreaking work.
Yeah.
So even coconut, palm oil, even harvesting, they were actually palm oil fruit bunches that were left to rot on the ground because there was not enough people or manpower to actually collect it and send it to the mills, So I think one limit of localization is actually manpower policy, but that can be solved with automation. But the struggle of automation is that there's not enough money being poured into R&D to actually build it, And we have R&D a lot in like tech, graphics card, but R&D in agriculture, nothing groundbreaking news, You get what I mean, Louis? I don't know. What are your thoughts about it?
My thoughts about it, because I because of again my upbringing, my mom literally she very very privileged experience, I feel. She grew up in this a huge house, and then like which beside that house there's a huge fruit orchard. And when I was young, I thought every parent was like that. Everyone grew up with a huge orchard, because she would always tell me whenever I went to buy to the market as a kid, I was like, oh, I want rambutans. It's like she would like have this very condescending remark saying, oh, when I was a kid, I ate anything I wanted from this tree, or every rambutan, any fruit, mangosteen, I just pluck it off. You have to buy. I was like, wow, I wish I lived in your era. So I had this mindset thinking, oh, maybe everyone of my mom's age grew up with an orchard, So as I grew older, I realized that actually, right, less and less people are doing this now. So that orchard was just left there. I think it's still left there without any maintenance now.
Okay.
Just family already moved, right? So, but I feel there is a lot of opportunity the way I see it, and because of all these things that my mom told me, I'm like, actually, this is a huge opportunity that people are not looking at. Why? Because it's embarrassing. I feel like most people, like, if you tell them, hey, what business are you doing? Oh, I'm a farmer. It doesn't sound sexy. Low class lah. Low class. In fact, like when I left my job at the oil and gas company before, there was like a colleague of mine who almost ventured into poultry, but he eventually didn't because he couldn't take it. It was like a bit of hard work, In fact, the business was doing quite well. I think it was exporting, selling about 22,000 chickens.
Wow.
A lot, right? And then like if you could just expand that, then maybe you could have made a lot of money. I just feel like it's something that if more young people, if we could give more airtime to it, we'll see that in fact if you think that your salary is small, right? 2,000 something so small, why don't you look into other things like this farming?
Correct.
I had one friend, engineer, who worked in oil palm. His starting pay was like 4,500,
Wow.
Yeah, just going into, and then like eventually he even started his own MPOC palm oil consultancy,
Wow.
Yeah. So he was like telling me, you like started a rental car business with the money, bought a few properties, all before 30. Because he could take the job, nobody wanted the job. He was a West Malaysian working in the deep forest in Sarawak. And they provided him a whole house with a maid there. 4,500. I think eventually he became a manager. Now he's back in KL, working with another company. But for 10 years, I think he was doing that. And it was like a very financially stable job. But, like you have to take that, you have to be patient, because it's very far away from your
civilization, so-called.
Civilization, yeah. But I think there are ample opportunities in this if you can accept that condition. But not everyone has to do that, like sit in the forest. A lot of jobs are actually quite near to the city, but people are not looking at it because they feel like it's low end job.
Yeah, you're spot on.
Stigma around it.
Yeah.
As a business, as a job opportunity. And very ironically, people think oil and gas should pay a lot. No. Most oil and gas, most engineers in oil and gas actually get paid only 1,800 compared to
yeah,
a lot. like minus the Shell and Petronas smaller companies which hire about like maybe 90% of all the engineering graduates, only
Correct.
1,008 to 2,005 versus 4,005.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to start off with nothing, I think that's a great place to start. I wish I knew that earlier.
Yeah.
But I didn't. I bought into the marketing that oil and gas is the most
Correct.
lucrative one. As a fresh
Same.
So for those fresh grads who are listening, maybe you can consider that. Look
Yeah.
into the agriculture stuff. If you don't mind it, I mean, I would have never minded it because I'm an introvert, you know. Like fresh air, very good air. He told me,
Yeah.
my friend told me that, and then
Yeah.
he's like, very healthy, you know. All your meals are cooked by
Yes.
the person. Everything is provided, you know.
Yes. Yeah. I love that you gave this analogy because the more I studied the vertical food chain, right, and which is a good segue to our next subtopic, is that I've seen bankers, investment bankers, CEOs of startups, tech startups, whatever. They were concerned about their health. They studied the food chain. Then I realized, wow, good opportunity. And there's this Dutch guy. He went into just producing kelp, seaweed lah, virtually seaweed, and farming it. And he was a tech startup mogul, and he just wanted, you know, a healthy way of, you know, fantastic business today. So you just think about the seaweed craze. Like my son, thank God, okay, he likes junk food, right? Which kid doesn't, right? But I'm blessed in a way that the junk food he likes is seaweed.
Oh, that's good. At least it's like people, right?
Yeah. So when I think about this tech mogul, this Dutch guy that I've watched and read about, yeah. So maybe the next question that I think we want to address, Louis, is we've looked at how big the value chain is that is often ignored. You've also touched about employment opportunities like this palm oil friend guy that you talked about. But what about going into it as a business? And you know, you have an interesting stat about Sunway XFarms. Maybe you want to share that?
Yeah, I mean, I've recently actually been looking at horticulture a lot. You know, like I think John, you saw my Facebook post. The reason is because just like the Dutch guy, I think too much tech, right? After so many years of like most of my work in the last almost 8 to 9 years has been tech based. You know, I face the computer about 10 to 12 hours a day, most days. So now I feel like I'm aging. I'm almost 35 now, mid-30s person. So I'm like, I can't go on like this forever. My eyes will be quite bad, you know, and I'm probably not getting enough sunlight. So I started to think, okay, I need to get some offline hobbies. And then when I started to do more planting, I'm like, it's actually a good business, you know. So then I also started to think, maybe I should do some of these like vertical farms. I wonder what's the process to set it up. In I think in Sarawak we have the eFresh. Have you heard of it?
Yeah. Heard of it by then. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they supply a lot. I think they supply most of the like lettuce, that kind of thing, like salad, vegetables in supermarkets in little plastic containers. So I was like, wow, actually someone is already doing it. And so when I saw this Sunway X Farm, I was quite excited because I saw that was like the biggest indoor vertical farm in Malaysia. It has 37,000 square feet. And what's interesting about this is that it's in the city, right? It's in KL, and that is to provide these vegetables. Like it's not like farm to table per se, but it's like closer than, you know, whatever else is being done, right? Okay, you have to imagine getting these lettuces all the way from Cameron Highlands to KL, right? That's a journey versus like getting in KL directly.
Yeah.
So for me that was quite interesting, but I started to also think if we convert more and more of these buildings into vertical farms, is that vertical farms, is it a very good use of our space at the same time? So this is a conundrum which faces all business owners. But with Sunway, I think they have a different idea around it. It's about you know, giving people more fresh food. I think the Sunway founder is a bit different in his way of conducting business.
Yeah. Your stats about Sunway XFarms actually conjure up a thought that it was so funny that I was looking for an office space for a previous business that I was in a partnership with.
Mm.
And I'm very sure you've been to One Utama.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a building that's owned by the same family, the Seoi Chan family, the Teo family, sorry, Seoi Chan group. And the building was not completed. They were still doing cement. The structure where everything was up, and the balcony was all up. And we're not even talking about paint, it's just literally bare cement, some brick building still being done. But the balcony, what was the balcony filled up with or not? Fish.
Fish. Interesting.
So they built like a drainage system, or a pool system around the building on the perimeter.
That's
And it was full of all contraptions. There were palms and everything, and there was fish in there. I'm like, what? And this is still construction going on. People still mixing cement, laying bricks, whatever. I said, wow, this family so commercially minded. And they already so they were wearing tilapia, if I'm not mistaken, was tilapia. So
that's for sale, is it? The tilapia?
I'm guessing. I didn't go and ask more, but I'm like, oh my god, this guy's a genius, man. The building haven't even rented out. Haven't even rented out. They were already doing
a very smart way of doing it, right?
Yes. Because the interior will take time. You have to put in the walls, but your foundation, your structure, all your outside, right, is already finalized already. You get what I mean? Interior will take some time. So instead of just sitting idle, they were actually doing fish farming outside. I'm like, wow.
That's amazing.
Wow. Yeah. And then I was just Googling while we were sharing about the X Farms. Apparently they it's called Fresh Growcer. And they have it on the rooftop of One Utama shopping center. I haven't seen photos of it's called Powerhouse. Powerhouse is where a lot of the buses, that's where the MRT stop for One Utama is actually. Yeah, that was the building. So I don't know how is it now. I've not been there since after COVID. So I went there before COVID. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it has taken place.
Yeah. I think seeing all this growth is very good news. Because I think that when we have such like X Farms and this what's the Growcer, it will also spur up more ideas in the city around.
Correct.
I think especially in cities. I think in smaller towns like Miri, it's not innovative per se. You just have land and you do things. But I think in the city, when people do this, it's a step towards sustainability. That's one.
Right.
Health is number two. Number three is of course profits. Over time, I think at the beginning probably you'll have some inefficiencies here and there, but I think if you run it for 10 plus years, adding some technology, you can sustainably produce this, and I hope that we can see more of it. Which also brings us to our last point about food security's impact on inflation.
Yeah.
Or rather the other way as well, impact of inflation on food security. So before we get into this, I think it would be apt for me to first define what's food security, so this part makes sense. So according to the World Bank 1996 World Food Summit, food security is defined when all people at all times have physical and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy lifestyle.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of times when we think about food, right, we think about the availability of food. Like we see food, it's there. But then the other part of the equation is, can people actually buy the food? Yeah, which is what you were saying, like, okay, I think you mentioned that before the call, like we are going to see 30% increase in the food prices.
That's right. The expected inflation of food prices because of gradual removals of subsidy, like the fuel subsidy, we are very likely to see a 30% impact in food prices going up. And it doesn't help that a lot of people have to hunker down and do two jobs, because you see, most people want to eat healthy. It's just that it's like what you defined earlier about physical access and all that kind of thing. because of time constraints, because of cost constraints, they can't cook at home and they can't cook a nutritious meal for themselves. And the struggle will be, if an inflation hits, who will be hit the hardest? Those at the lower rung of the economic society. And do you think they have time? They may be holding on to jobs. They may be doing the gig economy, rushing from here to there. And the likelihood of them having the luxury of having their own cooked meals is also a question mark, you see. Yeah. And one more thing, Louis, is this. I don't want it to sound like we're trying to solve world hunger, okay? But I think the point of, or the anchor of this episode is like, are there opportunities if we look deep enough? Are there opportunities that we can actually either help other people in the lower strung of society by being an entrepreneur as well? If you start aquaculture, horticulture, vertical farming, what are you doing as an entrepreneur? Yes, you're taking a risk, but you're also giving opportunities for people to get a job.
Yeah.
And what the example of your friend who got 4-5, stayed in the forest for 10 years, and then, he gets a good consultancy roles now because of his experience. This is something that, again, change your mindset to look at it as an opportunity rather than direly worrying about food inflation, 30%, what can you do about it, And I think that's where, grow your own produce. Change your dietary things that you can eat. Get the same nutrient. Even for me, I'm ashamed to say this. I don't actually calorie count or know what's the nutrients going. I just know there's as long as I try to get ample vegetables, ample protein, and less and less carbs, that's for me. But if you maybe spend a little bit of time reflecting about your food choices, that's where you can help control inflation, your own personal inflation for food as well. Try to eat less imported stuff, try to eat more local. You're actually getting more nutrients, actually, more fresher food.
Yeah, agree. I think there's a lot of ways to combat this issue. I think from a personal individual point of view, what you mentioned is very, very good. I also don't calorie count because I actually found that to be quite inefficient. You just have so much time calorie counting. It just takes away time from doing other things, unless maybe a fitness coach.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
But I think that's called intuitive eating. Like eat when you're hungry, make conscious choices of what you will eat. I think that's good enough for most people. So getting jobs in the right field, I think that would work. On the flip side, like if you're an entrepreneur, right, we see that if you look at the people in the B40, that number is quite big. I think it takes up like 40%. Was it?
Yeah.
40% of Malaysians are in that group, right? So these are people who probably don't have that option to just easily, comfortably accept the inflation, right? So then there is an opportunity there. I feel if for the right person, there's an opportunity there to serve this market, either by providing cheaper food or alternatives, or even like teaching people to grow their own like food is possible. Yeah, but the opportunities are endless if you understand these statistics.
Yeah. Just to give a case study of what we've just mentioned, this is actually an Indonesian unicorn, and ironically, I shouldn't use the word ironically. Our pension fund, Kuok, is actually an investor. Yeah, our pension fund is actually an investor in this unicorn. He came from a very poor family. And he started a catfish farming business actually while he was in college. He was trained as an engineer, and he saw that the problems they were facing. I don't want to spoil the story for the audience. They just go Google eFisheries Indonesia. They saw the business opportunity rather than being the catfish breeder. They actually went to become the supplier of technology, feed management control solutions to these fish farmers. And when I read about it, I'm like, the smart feeding system is not like a TSMC 7 nano, 3 nanometer kind of semiconductor technology. It's just a problem that is ripe for solving, but because of less media attention,
Not sexy lah.
not sexy lah, and all that kind of thing. And yet this guy literally, he was sleeping on the, I read his background story. I was like, if this guy and had that, and from this kind of background, non-privileged and all that, and start doing this, and it's not rocket science, by the way, right? The tenacity to do it. My God, are we missing a lot of opportunities that are staring at us in the face, but we choose to be biased and not look at it?
True.
And yeah, and you mentioned about B40 and all that. They are certain things that the government policies can actually encourage people to actually get into entrepreneurship in a micro entrepreneurship, and actually start all this, and who knows where you can become. They may start out with just like enough to feed the family, all right, and then it catches on. The guy is a little bit more entrepreneurial minded. He can actually scale the business and all that kind of thing. I mean, I read about one lady from Kampong Antarabangsa, Kampong Baru in KL, and she just does nasi lemak, and she's bringing millions of ringgit a year.
Wow.
Nasi lemak is very, very famous. I've not gone and tried it. I just watched a documentary about her before. So yeah, it's quite amazing lah. I mean, these are like your non-university grads, school of hard knocks.
That's true. I mean, but that does match up with, like what we're talking about here, right? Like, because people can't afford the expensive stuff, what are they gonna buy? The cheaper stuff, right? If you can sell things at scale at 1-2 ringgit, that would make sense for a large group of people, and that would be a huge opportunity.
Correct.
I think to add on to that part, right? I think I saw like a news covering like this guy selling curry puff. Did you see that?
Oh no, explain.
It was like just selling curry puff, one curry puff for 1 ringgit lah, 80,000 a month. Yeah.
What are we doing, Louis?
Yeah, exactly. So like that is the capitalization of the opportunity. Instead, people are thinking about, maybe I should open a franchise. Maybe I should. Not really. So if you look at this market, right, there's a lot of people who need that food price at that level.
Yes.
Ready to eat food at 1-2 ringgit, I feel.
Yes.
Every day.
Yes.
They're gonna come to you every day, and that's like a volume-based business.
Correct. Yeah. So I think to synthesize our chat today, maybe Louis, let's go through the 4 questions that we're gonna anchor this series going forward about future trends. Maybe you can take us through that.
4 questions.
Okay. So what is the trend?
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Oh, sorry. I only got 2 questions actually.
Okay.
Oh, okay. 3 questions. So, what is the trend? Why is it important? And how can you benefit from it as an employer, entrepreneur, and investor? What's the 4th?
I think it's I separated the why is the trend and why is important. It's so for me it's just a numerical thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is what we're gonna cover, and I think the idea is to help uncover maybe some hidden or less known opportunities that you can profit from as from any level as an employee, as an entrepreneur or investor.
Yeah. So not sexy, but hey, it makes money.
Yeah, a lot of things that make money are not sexy.
Yeah.
Surprisingly not sexy. People think because people see what's on the news, right? What makes news is like Meta, Facebook, all these things they make news.
Nvidia, yeah.
Because sometimes tech people, they make news because they understand PR, they understand all these things, right? And they know what would make people talking, and they know what would drive up their share prices. People in agriculture or many other verticals, they don't know. They don't know how to deal with this, and probably they don't care.
Yeah.
So it's also good because things that are hidden are usually quite profitable because less people are like.
Correct.
It's a much bluer ocean than the rest.
Yeah. So I hope you've benefited from that show. Again, let us know what are the trends that you in your line of work, your gig, and you found it interesting. Please share with us because we would love to hear about them and we love to feature them on this episode. I think going forward, this channel was really started with one thing in mind, is to level up the financial knowledge, financial literacy, entrepreneurship mindset for Malaysians and those that are interested within this region, Southeast Asia. And also, if you love content like this, do subscribe to the channel, give it a like, share with your friends and family, and hit that notification bell, because every time a new episode is out, you'll be notified. Follow us on TikTok. Follow us. If you don't have an attention span of an hour, we understand, right? Today it's the attention economy. Louis has done a great job editing key highlights, and follow us there as well.
Thank you
See
so
you guys
much.
in the next video. Thank you.
Bye.